Hi everyone, I just wanted to say a few words about the assignment, the artifact video assignment that is, to encourage you to have fun with it and provide you maybe some tips and tricks that might be helpful to you, knowing that a lot of you are very familiar with doing videos. The question you're asked to answer in this assignment is, how does gender mediate practices in schools and workplaces for those of you who work outside of school settings? So start looking around, and I promise you that you're going to begin to see these kinds of examples everywhere. In fact, you may already have. So here's just some locations and schools that might get you going. So it could be what students are asked to do, how they're asked to line up, for example, the kinds of activities that they engage in, either in classrooms or outside of classrooms in the playground, that sort of thing. It could be who speaks out in classrooms and who doesn't, and whose voices are heard and whose are muted or kind of held back. It could be, those empty hallways, and when they fill up with students, what kinds of things do we see that are mediated by gender? What kinds of groupings do we see in schools that are mediated around gender identity and those sorts of things? Who occupies what kinds of jobs in the school? And it could be the formal kinds of positions, or it could be the informal kinds of activities in the school, and who does what. So there's various ways in which you can, locations everywhere really in a school where you can be thinking about these issues. So start with an idea. Think about something that is intriguing to you about behaviors or something that's going on in the school that's of interest to you, and then match it with an artifact, a thing that represents that gendered practice. It could be a book, like a textbook or a library book or a series of books. It could be a sign that represents gendered assumptions. It might be a policy statement that has gendered implications, but they may or may not be addressed, or it perpetuates gender binaries and stereotypes, that sort of things. Perhaps it's an awards cabinet that demonstrates the allocation of resources in a gender way, or the everyday artifacts such as cleanup rosters or yard duty or club leadership, and so on and so forth. And I could go on, and I'm sure you could as well. So there's all kinds of ways in which we can see these kinds of mediations in our school settings. Once you've decided on your artifact and its gendered implications for workplace practices, then you can develop a gender-based analysis of the artifact that will shape your presentation in your video. At this point, you might want to start collecting videos or photos, that sort of thing, and of course the artifact itself. One thing I would caution, however, is that you will need to be, if you're going to video students, you're going to need to be prepared to blur faces, make sure identity is not clear at all, or obtain permission from all the students' parents that are shown in the video. And that's going to take far too much time. So I would just suggest that you not show real life students in your video, or you show them from behind, for example, where it's not clear at all who they are, or you just use video cuts or, shots that are available through your server, that sort of thing, rather than your own students, although it's really tempting to do that. Now, you might want to take pictures of your classroom, for example, without the students to show something that's going on, or some corner of the school. That's okay, but when it comes to identifying students, that's much more problematic, so just keep that in mind. Now, you'll record using some kind of platform that will enable you to make a short video of probably no more than 10 to 15 minutes, particularly if you're using a free platform, or you only get it for a certain length of time. Usually they will limit the time that is available to you for your videos, and often they'll limit things like editing and that sort of thing, although you can still do all kinds of things without editing. Some of the one that I use almost exclusively in the work that I do is Screencast-O-Matic. I like it because it's simple to use once you kind of get used to it, and it's pretty easy to get used to. It just basically videotapes what's on your screen. So if it's a slide of some kind of presentation or PowerPoint or whatever it happens to be, or a video that you found on YouTube or whatever, and you want to use a clip, whatever's on your screen, it will take a video of. So you can stop and start and kind of insert things into your video if you want to do it that way, if you don't have the editing function. But you can make a short video of no more than 10, preferably, and maximum 15 minutes. If you go longer, you may not be able to use the free platform, as I said. Some examples are here. iMovie, some students have really used that very successfully, and they're very professional looking. I haven't quite tried my hand at that yet, but maybe someday I will. Screencastify is another one. It's very simple, very straightforward. Loom is another one. Very simple, very straightforward, without a lot of bells and whistles. They're meant more for kind of quick putting together of information. And the limit I've already talked about. So putting it all together, here are some things to keep in mind. And these are things that I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to you. Plan what you're going to say. It could be a full script. If that's most comfortable for you, write it out. If you're going to do something like that, I've got a Mac, for example, and when I set it up on the slideshow, the presenter version of the slideshow, on one side I've got my script or my points, on the other side I've got my slides, and I can see the slide that's coming up too, and it's just very easy to use. So if you've got something like that, that makes it easy. And you can put your script right on the screen. But some people prefer points to speak to. It sometimes feels a little more spontaneous and can be a little more interesting to listen to. Also, think about how it's going to be organized visually. So are you going to include, for example, like the little picture that I'm in here, or some are actually standing or sitting right beside a screen where the slide comes up and it fades out, and it's quite a fancy setup. But you need to think about how you're going to sync your script, your points, or whatever it is, and what's actually going to be shown on the screen. I know all of you know this, but just as a reminder, practice what you will say out loud. If you're not used to talking to a screen and, with nobody else in the room, feels kind of odd when you first do it. So practice what you're going to say out loud. And what I find helpful about that is that anything that's difficult to say, or something that sounds kind of stilted and you think, oh, I better get rid of that, you can edit it right then and there. So edit it, practice it out loud, again for timing, to be sure that you're not going way past, and pacing as well, where you need to slow down, where you need to speed up, that sort of thing. And then record it. And you can choose to do the recording as a voiceover, or you can speak directly to the camera, or you can do both. It depends on the program that you're using and how you want to organize the information that you're actually putting out there. So, and what and how are you going to submit your assignment? Well, because this is a two-part assignment, and I'll explain that in a moment, then there's kind of two parts to what you're going to do. And the first part is the Artifact Video Assignment Forum is where you are going to submit your assignment. Because it's a forum, again, you don't have to put anything in the Submit Your Assignment section of eClass. You can just put it right in the forum, but make sure you look for the right forum, because there's two of them going on at the same time. So there's the Artifact Video Assignment Forum. I believe it's in Module 4. And just look for that title, though. And you'll post just as you would, all the things that you say in the forum as usual. Rather than that, you're just simply going to post your URL, that is the address where somebody can click and find the video that you put together, and in some format that's easily accessible. So I use YouTube because it's a little more complicated now than it used to be, but it's still pretty easy to do. And if you have any questions about how to do that, then there's like a million videos that show you how to do that. So just make sure that they're current ones, so that you're using the current process that they're using. So you're going to post it like this. So this will be the artifact forum. And this is, let's pretend this is the space where you're going to put your information. So I would put something like, you can find my video at with my URL here. I just made one up. You're not going to find anything there. And then underneath, I'm going to put my references, and then I'm going to list all of my references that I've used to support my discussion in my video using APA 7th edition style. Okay, so your URL and your references. That's all you need to publish, other than all of the work you've done in producing the video, of course. And now we've got a forum. And so you've started a thread. And the second part of the assignment then is, and by Module 5, and I forget the exact date, but during Module 5, earlier on in Module 5, you'll be responsible for watching at least 2 other videos and commenting on your colleagues' videos. And I'm going to open it up so that you can choose from anything that's there. Now, when I say that, I would suggest that when you post your video, that the title that you can use for your forum, that you make it really clear what your video is about so that people can find videos that they're going to be really interested in. So whatever your topic is, use that as your title instead of getting super creative. Unless you can get super creative and tell us what your title is, then even better. But tell us what it is so that people can find stuff that they're interested in having a look at. And then you're going to be able to discuss just like you would on a regular forum. So you can respond to watching the video, what you learned, something that you hadn't thought about before, or some experience that you've had in relation to what was explored on the video, and so on. And then you will have that back and forth just like you normally would in a forum. And you can watch as many as you want. You only need to respond to 2, but you may want to do more than that because, really, as we know, the resources are going to be many and they're going to be really interesting. So you may want to, in fact, look at more than 2, but you're only responsible for 2. Okay, now the last thing I wanted to talk about is the rubric. So the rubric is, the way I've set it up is to have 3 categories of marks with a maximum and a minimum. And the first category is the ideal. And then each of the categories below is somewhat less ideal in certain sorts of ways. Not that it's terrible. It just means that, it doesn't quite meet the mark to the same degree. And so, I would suggest you read this one and see the kinds of things that I'm going to be looking for. And then when I mark it, I'm going to be able to highlight the things that you were able to demonstrate in the video. I'm not going to be, when I talk here about the creativity of the presentation enriches understanding and so on, I'm leaving room for people that do something, really fantastically interesting. You're not responsible for being a expert video producer and presenter. But if you can make it as interesting as possible from using the skill set that you have, that's what I'm looking for. So I'm not looking for Hollywood production. I'm looking for something that is interesting, that is presented in an interesting way, just like, when you're teaching, something that's interesting, and that you present it in an interesting and engaging way. So those are the kinds of things I'm looking for, rather than razzle-dazzle Hollywood presentation style, if that makes sense. And, the more it's related to and the more it reinforces the content and supports the content, the better it is as far as I'm concerned. I think that's everything. If you have any questions at all, and I didn't mean to go on this long, but if you have any questions at all about process, about actually producing video, from my perspective, most people know how to do that now because everybody's been teaching on Zoom or whatever it happens to be, and you've been producing videos for your classes and that sort of thing. So I find that most people have actually got way more experience than I have by now. But if you do have questions and this isn't something that's been a part of your experience, then I'll help to the degree that I can, or I can point you in a direction that might be helpful. If you're having trouble coming up with a topic or resources to support your discussion about that topic, then we can talk about that as well, and what you might do to be able to find some things that would be helpful. So I think that's everything. Let me know if you have questions. I hope you have a lot of fun doing this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing every single one of your videos. This is always my favorite assignment, actually, to mark, I think, from my perspective anyway. All right, take care.